Hi, I'm Don. Welcome to my studio. So today we're going to talk about finishing models, the tools or brushes that I use, and varnishing, and of course, curing.
That's good.
There are a few paints that stand out as perfect for finishing touches like black outlines and such. Also, we'll talk about brushes. Most of my brushes are sponsored though, so I'm a bit biased. And also, we're going to talk about varnishes and their curing times. Mats and tools are all sponsored by the following brands. So I'm just doing finishing touches on these models leisurely when a comment here at YouTube kinda triggered me to create a video. So the commenter said that I was wrong when I said dry brushing can be better than airbrushing when it comes to underpainting, and also mediums is just a marketing tool so that people will buy more stuff in the miniature painting hobby. So the basis of the commenter for his painting comment is miniature painting. I then realized I have to flex my fine arts background. Unfortunately, the commenter kinda made me realize that miniature painting is not yet an art form. Hopefully one day though, as miniature painting matures, it will be considered an art form. Personally though, I consider miniature painting an art, thus I spend a lot of time doing miniature painting. If I don't see this as an art form, I won't waste my time on miniature painting. Originally, I have no plans of releasing a video this soon since I'm kind of focused on working on some of my commissioned works, especially my Star Wars commissioned works, since of course those pay the bills, and spending too much time on YouTube won't really pay the bills, to be honest. But huge thanks to the commenter cause he kinda triggered me in a good way to release a video this soon. Don't get me wrong guys, I love comments and feedbacks. It fuels me to do better videos every time. Now I don't want this video to be preachy about art and art form and art style, so let's talk about extreme and edge highlights. I don't usually show edge highlighting, detail painting, and highlights on camera in some of my videos because I simply don't have the setup to paint really nice small details while recording on film. Anyways, we're using the detail brush from Redgrass Games. It's 02 size, and we're also using our highlight sauce. Our highlight sauce is actually just a workaround since acrylics dry so fast, but we're more comfortable using small brushes when painting details. As you've seen earlier, I really love drawing and illustrating with very fine high level of detail with inks and watercolors. But with acrylics, it's kinda like a no-no in a way if you paint with small brushes. Thus, we came up with the highlight sauce, the $100 highlight sauce. Now you could paint with your small detail brushes and the point won't dry on you. Some old-time miniature painters just use water for detailing, and much respect guys. I only use Kolinsky brushes for detailing, like the Kolinsky brushes from Spellcrow, Redgrass, and Vallejo. Now I'm very much aware of the fat brush with a thin point. That's a guideline. It's also a workaround, much like our highlight sauce. It's a pretty good workaround of using a fat brush with a thin point so that the fat brush will have water and it will help prevent the drying of the tip of the brush. So obviously you can paint fine details with the fat brush as long as it has a thin point. But it doesn't feel natural for me because when you do illustrations and painting, you use detail brushes. Thus, I prefer our highlight sauce and small detailed brushes. Now we do glazing and blending. I chose colors here or paints here that are perfect for everyone, for water acrylic painters, because you don't need mediums to use them. You could also use washes, but they're just watered down paints, so I'm not a fan. Flow paints are naturally transparent and you just need to thin them down with water. You don't need mediums because again they're transparent already, and the model colors are kind of thick and creamy. You need to thin them down with water. You don't need to water them down into wash consistency because they're transparent already and they will produce nice transitions even if you don't water them down. Oh, another workaround of old-time miniature painters, because they use water for glazing and detailing and such, and if you add water to paints, they become runny, and runny paints tend to run towards the ferrule of the brush. So washes do not really damage your brushes. It's the property of those washes because they're just watered down paints and they tend to build up inside the ferrule, which is the metal part of your brushes. Transparent paints and inks and also the glaze paints, which is very limited in terms of color, are also great for glazing. Since they're already transparent, you just need to add a bit of water so that you come up with a milk consistency. So let's be clear here, guys. I'm not saying that old-time miniature painters are wrong and that I'm right because I'm a fine artist and I know how to draw and paint watercolors and acrylics and oil painting and stuff. But all I'm saying is that all these supposedly rules or guidelines, they're just workarounds. They're like over thinning your paints with water and use them for glazing and use them for washes. Also using a fat brush with a thin point and also wicking your brush so that your glaze or watered down paint will be too runny or run all over the model. Those are just workarounds. So my objective is simple. It's to help beginners and fellow painters understand that painting with a consistent milk consistency by using mediums to add transparency and not watering them down into wash consistency is easier than trying to paint acrylics like watercolors. If you have to mix your paint into roughly the same consistency every time, it's easier to master how to apply paints and how to use them. So for example, you're glazing and it's not very runny because you added glaze medium. It's easier because it's very familiar. You're very familiar with the consistency. So much like our highlight sauce, which is just a workaround, because acrylics tend to evaporate. Well, the water evaporates, and after mixing the perfect mixture or perfect consistency for detail painting and highlights, the water will tend to evaporate and then you have to mix water again. So it's difficult to keep the consistency for detail painting and highlights. Unlike using our highlight sauce, you won't experience tip drying and the consistency of the paints remain the same. Oh, by the way, natural Kolinsky brushes are preferred for acrylic painting simply because acrylic tend to eat synthetic brushes. Anyways, now we do outlines. The outlines or the black outlines, I usually prefer using sepia ink or the smoky ink. The smoky ink is a creamier version of sepia ink and you have to dilute it a bit with water. Washes also work with outlines, but I find them too transparent. Contrast paints will also work, but still I find them too transparent. paint thinned down a bit with water is better than washes in my opinion, especially if you're going for a really heavy, nice outline to give more definition to your models. I highly recommend using inks though, especially sepia ink or black ink if you like black, because you don't need to thin them with water. Like the pure form of the inks is perfect for doing the outlines. The outlines or black outlining, depending on what color you want, you could also use purple or violet ink and it will give you the same awesome result. It will give more definition to the elements of your model. Also now I realize why I prefer or I love ink so much because I just showed you my ink illustrations. So don't listen to me when I make fun of washes, I'm just a biased fart. Now we talk about varnishes. There are so many kinds, polyurethane something and acrylic varnishes. I prefer my mecha varnishes. Mecha varnish were formulated for articulated kits and even action figures. Also, regardless of type, gloss varnishes tend to be stronger than matte varnishes. Mecha varnishes were formulated for gunpla, meaning they were formulated to withstand playing with plastic robots. I usually use or I mostly use an airbrush when doing varnishing, and you cannot produce a nice matte finish with brush painting the matte varnish simply because it will produce a satin finish. So I said earlier that gloss varnishes are stronger than matte varnishes simply because of the method of application. We simply paint the gloss varnish thicker than the matte varnish since we will produce a nice glossy finish if we paint it in around like 3 semi-thick coats. So the semi-thick application of the gloss varnish makes it like suitable for final varnishing. Also, it's perfect if you need a very durable finish, especially for miniature painting. Notice in this old video that I stole in my own from my own YouTube channel, I even paint a thin coat of gloss varnish over the primer. As for the matte varnish, it's simply weaker than the gloss varnish or satin varnish because you need to apply it in very thin misty coats. So if you don't airbrush the matte varnish kinda a bit far away from the model and you don't airbrush it thinly, you won't produce a matte finish. Thus, due to the method of applying gloss and satin varnish, they are more durable than the matte varnish. But I highly recommend you only do the gloss varnish, the thick gloss varnish, once you're finished with the model. This squig, for example, that we painted the other day, I sealed this with a thin coat of matte varnish just to remove the sheen of the glazes. That's it, Pansit. I hope you liked the video. I'm going to finish these models now. That's it. We're done. I hope you liked the video. Do like, comment, subscribe, and consider joining the channel so that you'll be part of our Discord community. Saludos!